Alright, this is video number 2 for Unit 3. Now this is probably going to be the most important things that you can do with vectors to be able to understand the projectile problems when we get there. So being able to do this is very, very important. So we'll spend some time really going over this in detail. So resolving a vector into its components. There are lots of times when you are given the original vector, but what you need to know is the two vectors that made up that vector. So if you look at the diagram, that would be the x component of the vector and the y component of the vector. And this will be very, very useful in the future, so let's go through how to do it step by step. We've got the vector, a force vector, doesn't matter what kind of vector it is 58 newtons, 32 degrees north of east, can be divided into a horizontal component and a vertical component. And let's figure them out. So we've got a diagram here. Make sure we get our vector arrows on our diagram. And we got fx and fy as our components of f. So our y component, fy. When we're doing our calculations, we're only working with magnitudes. So we will not use vector arrows in calculations with components. So let's figure out what the y component would be. The only things we know here are the angle and the magnitude of the other vector. So if we write that out, if we've got that f, the magnitude of f is 58 newtons, and our angle is 32 degrees. Whether it's being north of east doesn't matter for just the angle, but it's important that we keep that in mind later. So Fy, to figure that out, we have to think about one of our trig ratios that would have in the opposite side and our hypotenuse, which would be sine. So sine of our angle, theta, should be Fy over f. But really the thing we're looking for is Fy. So Fy, if we're dividing by f, we have to multiply by f to move it over to the other side. So we get f times sine theta. It's not a hard process, you just have to be able to do this. Now we've just got to plug in our numbers. So Fy is equal to f, which is 58 newtons, times the sine of our angle, which is 32 degrees. Just 2 sig figs, just like our numbers. Fy is 31 newtons. There we go. It's not hard, just need to be able to take an original vector and put it into its components, and you need to be able to do it quickly. So if you can skip the sine theta equals Fy over f step and just have Fy equals f sine theta, do that, save yourself a little bit of time. So our x component, so fx, again without a vector sign because we're just looking at our components. And if we use sine, chances are the other component will always have cosine. So fx over f, and you can check the trig on that to make sure, but it is indeed going to be cosine theta for fx. And fx is 58 newtons times the cosine of 32 degrees, which works out to 49 newtons. So fx. Now one thing with components is we don't deal with directions, but yet we have to make sure if they're going to be positive or negative at the end. Typically, as we've always done, north and east are positive, south and west are negative. Both of our components here end up being positive because one is north and the other is east, just like our diagram shows. Always draw a diagram. Then you don't have to add a negative sign to your equations. If one of them was south or west, or left or down, you would have to give it a negative sign component so that it shows the magnitude is negative in a negative direction, which is what it says down here below. Because we're working on scalar components, no arrows. So just like I said, Fy and Fx are components, they're magnitudes, they don't have vector arrows over their symbol. And just like in the calculations, F and Fx and Fy are components and are magnitudes, no vector symbols. But the key is dealing with making things positive or negative. So both of ours were east and north, which is why they're both positive at the end. If we had some that was west and south, we'd have to make that component negative. In the examples in some of the problems, you'll have to be able to do that to get the right answer, and hopefully you start seeing that pattern easily. So take a look at the example problems, and hopefully they go well.